Hey Booktube, it's me, Sadie, and I am here to do my October wrap-up, and while it is the 30th and the 31st still exists, I'm not going to finish anything then. I plan to spend the next 2 days reading more War and Peace so that I can get some more of that done, and then I'm moving into nonfiction in November. I'm also going on a bit of a holiday, which means aside from the fact that I'm going to have a pretty substantial haul in November, I don't want to start anything, and I have plans for 2 books that I'm taking with me, and then I'm just going to buy books, because I know I'm going to buy books. And I've got really bad hair today, and I don't know why, but this is not a fashion show, so it doesn't really matter. So, I have a couple of books, let's jump right on in. The first one is My Antonia by Willa Cather. I'm going to add an R there that doesn't exist. This is the Drop Cap Penguin edition, which my husband got me, so I finished C. I have not started D. I probably will when I return from my trip, but I don't want to be taking these lovely books with me because I don't want them to get bruised and banged up in my bag, which is exactly what's going to happen to whatever I take with me. And so this is the second book? It's the second or third in the series. Does it say inside? I know O Pioneers is another part of it, and there's a third one. I was going to get the other 2 and read them all together, but I didn't, and I'm fine with that, and you completely don't need it. It was a gorgeous read. We're told the story from the narrator, Jim, and basically there's a bunch of bohemians. So he moves in with his grandparents. He is trekked across the country to Nebraska, where it is a hard scrabble life and very Little House on the Prairie, dugout style. And there's a passel of bohemians who don't speak English, and one of them is Antonia. And he has this kind of friendship with her where he teaches her how to read English, and they spend time together. And then when his grandparents get too old and he moves from the farm into the city, she also moves into the city, but for different purposes, and he watches her life from the sidelines. And one thing I was really interested in this is, from the very beginning I was like, oh, they're going to end up together, oh, they're going to end up, like, it's so cliche, they're going to end up together. They don't. At the end of the book, we see the narrator journey back to his home place in Nebraska, and he meets back up with Antonia and how her life is played out, and it's quite sad. Like, she has the most tragic life, and she makes it work, but it's still horribly sad, and the narrator just kind of floats through. And just beautifully written. I'm really glad I read it. I'm really glad I've got this gorgeous copy of it, and yeah. If you're interested in pioneer writing or writings of the Midwest in that particular time frame, when was this written? Are you not going to tell me? I don't know that it's going to tell me. Where's the copyright? Come on, copyright. Lots of stuff about, 1932. That was the 9th printing. Okay, first published in 1918. So that gives you an idea of the time frame here. And it's just really well written, very enjoyable. The narrator, Jim, is very adorable at many times. And it's interesting to see his take on Antonia, and it's interesting to have a woman writing a male narrative from that time period that isn't romanticized. So, started with that. Then I moved into reading. This is from the Book of the Month. This is the May, one of the May books from the Book of the Month, The Leavers by Lisa Coe. And I did not like this book. I don't understand why it's so popular. We have our main character who is Deming, but then they change his name to Daniel once his mother gets deported, but he doesn't know his mother's deported, and he ends up in upstate New York with a couple after he's been living in Chinatown in a group house, and it's very confusing and jarring, and I wish, like, there's a point to which it switches from being this guy's youth, which is poorly written and just idiotic, to him grappling with his mother and meeting his mother and all of that. That portion is really good. Like, I really enjoyed that part. And then all of a sudden, he completely turns left and does a bunch of weird stuff that doesn't make any sense. And that's where we end. So the middle portion was really good, but the front end and the back end didn't make much sense. And there was a lot of talk about music, and he becomes a musician, but it's really cardboard and two-dimensional. And then all of a sudden he has synesthesia, where you can see colors when you hear music and stuff like that. And it just doesn't make any sense. He's just a bit of a letdown, like this book. This book is a bit of a letdown. There are better books about immigrants and deportation, so I don't understand why it's so popular. But I read it. Then I read Jennifer Egan's A Visit from the Goon Squad, and I prefaced this with, I really wanted to read this. I got it at a used, Friends of the Library used book sale for like $1. And I was so excited because I picked it up and put it down, at the bookstore, and I really wanted to read it because the premise is an aging former punk rocker and record executive. Where is the punk rock? Okay, I was a punk when I was a kid, and so he references the Dead Kennedys once. This does not give you an aging punk rocker. There's not a lot of music in this. There's very little music. And then we have background stories of like 5 different people, none of which I really needed, none of which were really fleshed out, and how they all play together in one final swoop. And none, I can't tell you, I know that one guy's name is Benny. Apparently there's someone named Sasha. Oh, I think she's the klepto. Like, I can't even remember which person did what. I just know that there was a cheating husband who ended up with a teenager for a bit. Sure, they're okay stories, but as a book, it fell flat, and I didn't care about it. And that's sad, because I really wanted to. And everybody was hyping it up. This leaves me with no desire to read the new one she's put out. Then, thank goodness, I went into The White Road by Sarah Lotz, which I had seen on Britta's channel. She had reviewed it, and I was like, oh, I need that. Like, based off of her review of this book, I went and I ordered it online. And then Steve Donahue talked about it too later down the road, but I wanted something kind of light, and I don't know that this was the right thing for something kind of light, but it was exactly what I wanted at the time. And it is a story about a man, what's his name? Simon, yes. See, there's too many men going on. So Simon has a near-death experience when he's spelunking, and he ends up haunted in a way. And it's alluded to the third man thing, or the at least being watched thing, which I loved. And in the process, him and his friends decided to start a internet page based on the whole purpose of him going spelunking was to take video of some dead people who got trapped while they were spelunking. He then gets trapped and almost dies while he's spelunking. And let me say splunk one more time. And subsequently, it works on the website because people are morbid, and we all know that. So then his friend decides to finance him to go to Everest to take more photos and videos of dead people on Everest. So he's going to go hike Everest because he can splunk, right? So he should be a decent hiker. And we follow him up the north face of Everest, and he also meets some women, some men, and then we get to know the stories of the people he's hiking with, and then the third man comes into play. And then when you're just thinking, okay, I'm going to get a little bored of this. They throw in diary entries of a woman who died on the side of the mountain, and twists and turns, and I don't want to give away anything, but let me just say, if you like really atmospheric books, if you like mysteries, if you like stuff like Shirley Jackson, or if you like that really kind of creepy horror that's not in your face and there's not a lot of gore, but it's like Vincent Price. If you like Vincent Price, this is a book for you. I'm going to go and look up other things by her. I hope they're equally as good. And it was kind of redeeming for my piss poor reading of 2 books prior to it. So I can only recommend The White Road by Sarah Lotz if you enjoy that kind of stuff. It's not very long. It's extremely, like, for a fiction book, there is a lot. She's done a lot of like secondary sourcing. It's just awesome. So that one I was super happy with. Then I was trying to put this one off until Nonfiction November, but I just couldn't. I got an advanced reader's copy through the lottery on Goodreads. No, library thing. So if you think that that's going to make me biased, you can just skip forward until I'm done holding this one up. I saw it at the bookstore and I was like, oh yeah, I have that and I need to review it. It's Riot Days by Maria Aliokina from Pussy Riot, also known as Masha from Pussy Riot. And this is her memoir from the starting point of when they were preparing to do the Punk Prayer to her final release prior to the Sochi Olympics from jail. And subsequently what happened to her in jail, as told in first-person narrative. There's also some drawings in here. And it's written in a way that might put people off. It's very snippets. It's got a little heading and then a snippet of writing about a specific thing, some things directly from her diaries, some quotes that pertain to her, and again, drawings. I really enjoyed this book, but I'm a big fan of Pussy Riot. I'm a big fan of the idea of revolution, and I think that a lot of her ideas are very important. And I want to continue to support Pussy Riot. If you need memoirs to be very linear and have a purpose other than to just tell you what happened, it's not going to be for you. But if you're interested in, or the other thing is, if you're interested in what it's like in a Russian prison currently, then this is for you. Because she was in prison for 2 years, basically. I think it was a little under 2 years prior to the Sochi Olympics. So it does give you insight into how the prisoners are currently treated, which isn't much better than how they used to be treated, and we have seen in Russian literature. And yeah, I enjoyed it. As far as a memoir, it's great. If it's your bag, if this kind of stuff is your bag, you'll love it. If it's not, don't bother. Is my overall estimation of that one. Two more to go. I'm sorry, this is going to be long. If I read this many books again, I'm going to break it into 2 pieces. But I never mean to. Then I read Ella Minnow P., a novel in letters by Mark Dunn, which was kind of frightening given the current state of affairs of the world. And I picked this one up. I got it used. I think I got it at Goodwill after I saw Olivia Pope talk about it. And so there's a blurb by the Christian Science Monitor. Not sure if that's Steve, but... And so I read it, and the thing about it is, it's a book of letters back and forth from cousins and subsequently their mothers, and then a couple of men that come in and out of their lives, and they all live or have lived or are trying to live or are immigrating from the island of Nollop, which is named after Nevin Nollop, who created the line, the quick fox jumps over the lazy dog. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, which is a sentence that uses all letters of the alphabet. So this island is basically like kind of wackadoodle, and it's based off of Nevin Dollop. And in the town center, they have some sort of thing, maybe a square or a monument, where they have the sentence strung up, like pasted up with tiles, and a tile falls down. And rather than think that it's the glue or it's the weather or, it's just life happening and they need to reglue the tile, they've decided that this is a message from Nollop to stop using that letter completely. Just eliminate it from the language. And so the government goes and eliminates it. And anybody who uses it has a 3 strikes, you're out. And you spent, first time you violate it, you spent the day in the stocks. The second time, there's public floggings, and the third time, I believe, you get banished. So we're back and forthing between these 2 cousins originally as this is happening, and the world descends into chaos because the tiles keep falling. And a man comes from South Carolina, which is the state closest to the island of Nollop, and he has science saying, listen, it's that the glue degraded and that's why it fell down. And they're like, no, it was Nollop, and Nollop made the glue degrade so that it would fall down. Until they end up with only 5 letters. And as we see them, and then there are people who are enforcing it. Like, some people are kind of like, oh, it's okay, we're not, and adjust to the fact that you can't use the letter O and it's all good. And then there are some people who are like, no, we are fundamentalist Nolopians, and we're gonna make sure that if you say that, we're gonna turn you in. And you've got people spying on other people turning in other people. Do you see how this parallels America right now? It's a scary read. It's a good read, but it's a scary read. So if you're interested in that idea and you like books and letters, then this is definitely for you. The last book I read is a book I got from Canada, and I have been informed that it is really hard to find in America, so I apologize. You can get it on Amazon.ca. Amazon.com is selling a few used copies. And it is Indian Horse by Richard Wagamis. It is part of the Canada Reads from 2013. It's also a Celebrate Canada book. And Richard Wagamis isn't with us anymore. He passed away. He's Ojibwe from the Wabaseemoong First Nation in northwestern Ontario, which makes sense why that's where all of his people take place. And this is the story of Saul Indian Horse, who, when we first meet him and his family are trying to continue their traditional lifestyle, and his brother ends up back with him. He was at the residential school and he caught TB. He subsequently goes off with his parents to seek a hospital or possibly die, and we understand that he's going off to die, basically, and then he dies. Something with dying in the TB. His grandmother takes him and decides to go to her cousins, but they come into a bunch of problems on the way there. Subsequently, he is left as an orphan. And as an orphan, he is then taken to a residential school, which were rife in Canada, and the last one closed in 1997 in Saskatchewan, where I am from. And so we go through what happens to him at the residential school, and it's a very traumatic and abusive place, and it's not an easy read. It's a hard read. He escapes through hockey, and I was a rink rat. I was raised a rink rat. My brothers, my cousins, pretty much any male in my family has played hockey. No one professionally, but we did get pretty close. Anywho, there's a lot of hockey because he escapes through hockey, and that is how he manages to stay sane. That is his escape, and that is actually how he manages to get away from residential school. So he goes off to play in a bush league. He goes from the bush league to the minors, and then his life kind of falls apart, and he begins drinking. And this is basically an examination into what I have seen and heard happens to a lot of people in residential school or who have gone through residential school. as part of the scoops. During the 60s, there were the 60 scoops where they went in and stole children and took them to residential schools to assimilate them. And after going to residential school, they may find a way out, but ultimately the damage that's been done to them leads them down the path of alcoholism or gambling or addiction, and they end up dying from that. In this case, he does not. He finds a way to get out of it, but it takes a long time, and in the process he becomes an alcoholic, and he works in the mines, and then at the end there's a twist that you aren't I wasn't expecting. I doubt anyone else was expecting it. I thought for sure it would have been expressly dealt with previously when we come to find out why everything's happened the way it's happened. And I think that just packs an even heavier punch into your gut. So it's not a very big book. It's about 221 pages, but it's a very good read. It's a very hard read. If you don't like hockey, I'm not sure how you'll fare with it, but I feel that as a method of escape, it's used quite nicely, and I don't think you need to know anything about hockey in order to be able to read it. So, yeah. Indian Horse by Richard Wagamese. Really enjoyed that one. That's everything I got through this October, and I will check in with you in November, Nonfiction November. Hopefully I have a giant stack of nonfictions I've read. And, yeah. Bye, Booktube.